At this time, what is your view of Joe Biden? But the second piece of this that I think some people miss is this is how humans have felt about just about everything in our history, from medicine to engineering to politics. It's really human and a good thing to want things to be better. Just want people to remember that their frustration is normal and an important part of how things will keep slowly getting better and better. There will always be pockets or absolute shit, but overall your efforts do matter. They are changing the world slowly, and just like we stand on the shoulder of giants, others in the future will stand on ours. The shitty part is change is real slow and takes a lot of time. As MLK would say, brick by brick, stone by stone. Same. Well, look at what Papua Joe done did now. And they say Trump had dementia. Look at this bullshit. Look what Biden did. I just shake my head and think, I don't like Joe Biden, but we couldn't have survived another 4 years of that orange skin asshole. I'll take a better system. Every time. This popularity contest we have had going is a bunch of bullshit. There is nothing representative in the US governmental system. Poor people have no voice. I am sure many more groups have no voice, but poorness is pretty broad and you would think should be considered. Since it affects so many, we shouldn't have to fight for voting rights. That should be our right as a citizen at the very least. Why are there so many people against immigrants? Barring the fact we are all immigrants to the US. Technically, aren't we the best country ever? Shouldn't we be proud that people think the US is a great place to live? Shouldn't we be trying to make our country look good? Like WTF, we can't even appear hospitable anymore with the fucking idiot anti-masker, vaccine morons throwing tantrums. I don't want to be a screaming moron shouting that the US is the best. I just want to be able to say that the place I live in is just good. I honestly checked out of politics for the most part following the election. Just the types of ideological battles that are dominating the discourse right now make me sad for the future, considering what's being ignored or swept aside. Seeing arguments about whether face coverings are a violation of rights while the world seems to be cooking itself seems a bit like not seeing the forest for the trees. If I think about it too much, I go into a fatalism spiral and lose motivation to reach milestones that most people find important, because I just assume society will break down in the next 50 years, so I might as well just tread water financially and play baseball until it all falls apart. Enforcer, this is Wendy's. My dad is always like, why don't millennials make saving for retirement a priority? And I just somewhat sarcastically reply, probably because we've been bombarded with doom and gloom since childhood. Either the country is going to implode before we even get the chance to retire, or the world will be in a global crisis. Either way, saving for retirement was just a waste of money. I'm not American, but it is very strange to many of us that Americans look at choosing their politicians as a consumer choice rather than a political one. When you're making a consumer choice, whether you like what you're choosing and how well it fits for you are paramount. Choosing leaders isn't like choosing a cell phone. It doesn't matter who you like. It doesn't matter if you don't agree with them on everything. The job is to vote in the way that's most likely to achieve the policy outcomes you want. Yeah, it was disappointing to have an election between two people in their 70s. As much as the right likes to say Biden has dementia, Trump is barely younger. No idea if either one does, but they're definitely old enough to be past their prime mentally. I would prefer the president not be old enough that cognitive decline is genuinely a concern. It might just be that boomers are a big voting bloc and they've helped push candidate ages up as they've aged. Too many super old people in all three branches really. Democrats and Republicans suck. Politics is a corrupt game. We should stick together cause we all have a lot more in common than the things we disagree about. They are trying to divide our communities. Don't let them. Just BC, we may disagree on politics doesn't mean we can't get along. There are bigger fish to fry than each other. Our enemies want us to fight and destroy and weaken ourselves. Let's come together and decide we are better off together. Peace, love, life. I dream of a time when we as Americans debate over which candidate is better and not which candidate is worse. I know Sanders isn't perfect, But I really wish we had gotten him in office. He has been trying to make the same changes since MLK Jr. was still alive, which is a great point of how bad our system is if he's still trying for the same changes for more than 50 years. O'Toole said he wants to privatize healthcare to be like the USA, when our socialized, free healthcare is literally one of the only good things Canada is known for worldwide. It's something we take pride in. Don't get me wrong, Trudeau's not good at all. Problem is that the alternative side of the spectrum is a very frightening prospect right now. As much as we'd like to say that Canada and the USA are different, sad to say that the only thing we can really say with certainty about ourselves is that at least we're not Americans, except we suffer a lot from the same issues. Fellow Canuck shared displeasure. What a knobhead, throwing money around and talking big but different rules for Trudeau. So many ethics violations and public and no consequences. SNC Lavalin, We Charity, private trips paid by government grant recipients, Trans Mountain, Blackface X3, groping a reporter, strong-arming and shoving MPs into their seats. That India trip, telling people to mask up and then not masking up, telling us not to travel and then going on trips. The same reason we got Joe Biden as president: compromise. The party was divided among a crap ton of candidates, to the point that none of them could win on her own, but Joe Biden could get enough of the candidates to throw their support behind him. There were a lot of women who wanted a woman president, so as a compromise, a female vice president was chosen, one that probably won't threaten the other female candidates in the 2024 race, should they decide to run again. Note: lifelong Democrat and I voted for Biden. Domestically, he sucks. His foreign policy sucks. I expected both of these. But here's the thing. There wasn't going to be an easy or pretty way to get out of Afghanistan. Did Biden fuck things up unnecessarily? Of course he did. But getting out was going to require eating a shit sandwich. And Biden's greatest quality is eating shit sandwiches. So for that, I'm appreciative. But there was a right way the withdrawal should have been done. Not easy but right. Troops leave last. They should have been in Kabul already. Get refugees out, then get the embassy out. The troops hold Kabul in the meantime. Once they are out, you tactically retreat and bring the soldiers home and let the country fall to what it was. I served over there. I've been in a gunfight in Kabul. Taking it was the hard part, holding it was easy. Not sure if Biden or his cabinet, but someone royally fucked it up because they wouldn't listen to those of us that have actually been there. Every troop who ever served there knew the ANA wouldn't hold back the Taliban. Sorry, I'm a frustrated veteran ranting. It's not all Joe Biden's fault the situation we are in, but his lack of tactics in the final mission of this campaign are unforgivable. In what way did Biden fuck it up unnecessarily? I'm getting really sick of seeing this sentiment with jack shit to back it up. The way I see it, he's dealing with the pile of shit he was left. Any pullout was going to look like this. It has nothing to do with Biden. Please offer some specific examples of how this mess is all Biden's fault instead of just asserting it as if it goes without saying it isn't. I've always said that Congress should have term limits, so that over time fresh blood can get in there and better represent all of us, not just their contemporaries. And having a ticking clock might just push them to be more effective with their time. Is it a perfect solution? Of course not. But the idea of career politicians bugs me. Of course, no one's gonna vote for that, so it's a moot point anyways lol. Not a fan. But he could be worse. The areas I care the most about, he has not really addressed or implemented any real changes. He's always been a classic, super corporate Democrat, so I'm not terribly surprised, especially for a Delaware politician. The idea that he's either a communist or the next FDR is ridiculous to me. Like most politicians, he's willing to take risks if it costs him little. He pretends he doesn't have the power to take certain actions that he does. that sort of thing. I really dislike how he intentionally fails to acknowledge the depths or breadth of issues. He's smart and experienced enough to understand the extent of his equivocating, classic political dishonesty which I loathe. One frustrating example of this was him being such an outspoken, enthusiastic supporter for employer-based health insurance during a pandemic with mass layoffs. If ever there was a time that shows the weak points of our current healthcare system, it's now. At some point, we need politicians in tracksuits with sponsorship badges like professional drivers, preferably with badges proportionate to size of donations, legalized bribes. YouTubers have higher levels of financial disclosure regulations than the people running this country. His strengths are his compassion, executive experience, and are better than most understanding of foreign policy, which is more a censure of our current crop of politicians than anything. I hope to love anything in life as much as he loves Amtrak. If that love inspires actual infrastructure improvements, all the better. Even if our priorities and some of our beliefs differ, I think he's a hard worker, and I like that he's not impulsive. I've always been very civically engaged and have not felt inspired to ramp up or dampen my involvement in response to his actions. If he runs in 2024, I do not think he will win re-election. What exactly was success supposed to look like? Were we going to train a bunch of riffraff to fight that barely wanted to be there in the first place? The war did what it was intended to. It made a few arms dealers richer at the expense of a population that no one really cares about and a few thousand soldiers. Does Biden impress me? Number. I'm just grateful to not spend my days wondering what in the fuck the president is going to do next. I'm a Republican. I voted for Biden. I knew I wasn't going to vote for Trump, so of the Democratic candidates I was most aligned with Biden, so from that standpoint I was okay with it. I don't like his domestic policies, but I knew that. I voted even knowing that Congress almost certainly would be with his party and be able to pass them. I didn't really have an opinion about his foreign policy, and maybe I should have, but Biden absolutely fucked up Afghanistan. Sorry, guys, but being president means you have to deal with the problems you inherit, and explicitly this issue could have been handled so much better. So I can't say I'm disappointed, because I didn't expect much. But even then, I still think his presidency is better than whatever Trump would have ended up doing, because he was that bad. I'm not a huge both choices suck person. I generally think that America does pretty good. I would have been happy with either Obama or Romney or McCain or Clinton. While I may disagree with one more than the other, they all would have been perfectly fine presidents. I think people expect perfection and don't understand that politics is inherently about negotiation and persuasion, which means you're never going to get 100% of what you want. That doesn't make the choice bad. 2020 was close, though. Woof. I am currently a Republican, because my assumption is that Trumpism and the current hypocritical leadership is a minor blip of populism that is going to disappear in an election cycle or two. If the anti-trade, nativist ideology sticks around, I have no problem abandoning the party. But right now, at least on paper, I agree more with the GOP than the Democrats. So my efforts are going to be voting in the primaries to get non-Trumpist candidates elevated. He's a president in a country that's designed to be run by legislators, with the president signing or vetoing legislation. The president can't wave a wand and make change happen. They can articulate a tone and a vision, and do some things by executive action. On the tone and vision front, I like Biden. While Afghanistan is a debacle, he values facts, competence, sets a tone of human decency and trying to do better, and a vision of an America where we all try to get along and look out for each other. The last guy set the tone of anger, resentment, and xenophobia, didn't value facts, or competence, or the rule of law, as it applied to him and his family, and a part of his vision that broke through was of preserving a white, Christian American order. Largely unchanged, on the whole. Still a lot more compassionate and competent than Trump ever was. Was Afghanistan a fuck-up? Yup, definitely. Does Biden deserve all the blame he's getting? Nope. He definitely gets some of the blame, but not all. Trump's deal with the Taliban kneecapped Biden from the start. Trump even openly said out loud, practically to their faces, that he wants the U.S. to leave Afghanistan. Is that alone bad? Number. The U.S. needed to leave, but at the negotiation table, you do not state your goal or desire bluntly. You have to keep your opponent guessing. Trump, Mr. Art of the deal, broke that cardinal rule and screwed it up for his negotiators. Add that with the tentative blatantly stated deadlines for withdrawal, and the Taliban knew exactly where and when to strike. The Afghan government and military collapsed, leaving the Taliban unopposed, hence why they ended up gaining so much land so quickly. So no, on the whole, I'd say Afghanistan was, roughly 60% Bush's fault, for starting it, roughly 15% Reagan's fault, for practically creating and dating the Taliban to begin with, roughly 10% Trump's fault, for that awful deal with the Taliban, roughly 10% Obama's fault, for continuing the war and not pulling out after getting bin Laden, roughly 5% Biden's fault, for the shitty exit that was kinda out of his control. Every time we elect a new president they typically need a year to backtrack all the shit the last idiot has done. Note I didn't say them or up there, so the first year of any presidency has so much wasted time in it which makes it usually unfair to judge that person immediately. But frankly I'm getting sick and tired of the last several years of tug-of-war where we do or undo things not because they are right but because the other party would hate it. It's not a democracy. It's bad enough that the two-party system is bullshit for a country this big, but add on to that one side just isn't trying to lead a country anymore. They are totally up their own asses playing everyone's favorite MMO, politics. I think Mr. Biden brings back a sanity that was sorely missing. Someone with what many would consider to be the highest position on the planet should be intelligent, a good diplomat, have empathy for other nations and opinions, and above all else, leave hubris at the door. Given the current political climate, I think Biden has negotiated this well and acquitted himself nicely. He was never going to be popular with half of the country, but unlike the other fella, he doesn't ignore or degrade those who don't like him. I'd love to see a shakeup to get both parties engaged again. My recurring daydream would be that if I ever ran for president and won, I'd ask my opponent to be my VP to keep me honest and try to breed trust and cooperation. To be honest, with what we know about the current climate change situation there really isn't such a thing as ethical oil. Maybe less unethical oil? Differently unethical oil? I am aware that our Western lifestyle is closely entwined with oil and that we can't just switch it off, but basically we need to put our efforts into finding alternatives and making them affordable, rather than spending our full efforts trying to get the last drops into our economy. Me being a radical leftist, I never liked him because I despise all neoliberals, but I will say the Afghanistan situation has not made me dislike him more, because the fact is that if the US stayed for another 20 years, we'd be seeing the same headlines in 2041. It is flat out impossible to create a sustainable democratic government there. It's been a kleptocracy from the beginning. You know why so many Afghan soldiers refuse to fight the Taliban? Because they haven't been paid in months. The corruption is so great that it has eaten the entire army's salary, and you can no more kill the Taliban off the new scheme to cure cancer that has spread to every organ. So, not a big fan of Joe, but my unfavorability rating today is the same as in June and in January. The funny thing is the thing he's being criticized for the most right now is probably the best thing he has done as president. He should be criticized instead for not doing more to stop the murder machine of capitalist healthcare. He wasn't one of my preferred candidates in the Democratic primary and is more conservative than me, but with that in mind, he's done all right. My main concerns going in were healthcare, education and COVID. His COVID response has been great. His education initiatives have been aggressive. He never supported Medicare for all, which is a problem for me. But I knew that going in, at least the ACA won't continue to be weakened and could see some improvements. On a more macro level, as the most qualified president in my lifetime, I hoped he would be a good deal getter. And as far as I can tell, It seems that he is. There is a lot to be said of someone who surrounds themselves with knowledgeable people and values their input. Jimmy Carter graduated at the top of his class and ran nuclear subs. Joe Biden graduated at the bottom of his class and schmoozed his way into Congress after like 2 years of practicing law. Part of what made Jimmy Carter such an awful president was being incredibly smart but incredibly naive, 2 words I would never apply to Joe Biden at any point in his life.